The president declared a national emergency. We're talking about the presidency. It's probably time for a late-breaking add-on video. So, what is going on here? Well, I can summarize some of it, though I obviously am not privy to everything that happens in the White House. Like the rest of us, I have to find out with the news. However, broad brushstrokes, what is going on here is that Trump could not convince Congress that the situation at the border, what he calls an emergency, was actually an emergency that warranted the spending of money for a border wall. And that's for a variety of reasons that really aren't necessary to this discussion. Suffice it to say, Congress did not agree. And in fact, there was a government shutdown, the longest in history, over this fact. So, why now? Well, part of the reason is that Trump felt that since the shutdown was averted for the second time because a spending bill got passed and signed, that now was the right time to initiate a national emergency, claiming that things were necessary, or situation was necessary, warranting the building of a border wall. A national emergency indicates that there is something that requires the president to act quickly. And even though he has admitted that he did not have to act so quickly, and he did that in the very first press conference he gave talking about the emergency, that's the idea behind national emergencies. There is the National Emergencies Act, which allows the president to declare a national emergency because the president can act more quickly than Congress can. And in fact, this is something that the founders recognized in our Constitution, allowing the president more leeway for things like utilizing armed services. So Trump can declare a national emergency, but that doesn't mean that that power is unchecked. There is a method in that act that I mentioned to actually stop the national emergency from happening. It would require both chambers of Congress, the House and the Senate, to vote essentially saying that there is no emergency and the president is not authorized to act. Now, the president can veto that, and it is unclear at this point whether the president could overcome that, or whether Congress could overcome a presidential veto at this point, because they would, remember, need 2/3 of a majority in both chambers. So Trump can declare a national emergency. Congress could stop a national emergency, but it's not clear that that would take. So what happens next? First of all, 16 states, including the state of Michigan, have sued the federal government for initiating a federal emergency or national emergency, saying that there is not a national emergency and that the reallocation of money to the border wall actually harms these states in some way, because when you go to court, you have to claim that there is some harm. Now, that's something that, should this lawsuit proceed, they'll actually have to prove in a legal sense that they are harmed by this. This week, and I believe the bill has already been filed in the House of Representatives, or the resolution rather, there will be debates in Congress on the measure to essentially nullify the president's national emergency declaration. I'm assuming what will happen is that will pass the House, and we'll see if it passes the Senate. There seem to be enough Republican senators concerned about the use of extraordinary powers in this instance that it might actually pass both chambers. At that point, it would go to the president, who most likely would veto it, and then we see what happens from there. So we kind of have two tracks of what's going on. We have the congressional track, and we have the courts, and either one could stop this from happening. What is probably likely to happen is that we have stuff going on in Congress, and eventually in the near future we'll have some sort of injunction in the courts saying that the government cannot do this. And that's not uncommon. We talked about in the main lecture the Youngstown sheet and the steel mill, steel and tube case, and in fact this is somewhat similar in terms of legal standing for that case. So this relates to our course material. I kind of just went there. We've talked about how the presidential power can be limited by Congress and what it means for actions that take place outside of legislative boundaries. So we talked about the Youngstown case. We also talked about the fact that people expect presidents to do extraordinary things, even when that's not what the presidency is intended to do. So we talked about that more in context of Obama and prior presidents, and that's because those presidencies have ended and they're easier to look at retrospectively. However, this relates to the fact that there are a lot of people who voted for Trump based on the fact that he said he would have a border wall, that there would be a border wall within X amount of time, and he made certain promises about who would pay for it and all of that. So he's trying to deliver on that promise for the people that voted for him. And yet we're finding out that he probably will fall into some trouble along the way. So this relates to our course material in terms of the powers of the presidency, the politics around the presidency, and that interaction between Congress and the presidency. And then, of course, as this court case gets moving, the interaction between the courts and the presidency as well. So we can really actually hope to see some of our course concepts in action as the course proceeds. And as that happens, I will check in with more add-on videos. All right, that's all for now. Bye-bye.